101 years on this earth. That is not just a number. That is a lifetime of watching everything a person thought he understood get rewritten from the ground up. The world Dick Van Dyke was born into barely resembles the one he is living in now. He watched silent pictures give way to talkies, black and white screens explode into color, and an entire entertainment industry rebuild itself from the foundation up more than once. His career gave him more joy than most people could ever reasonably expect. He stood on stages big enough to make a person's knees shake. He shared scenes with people whose names are still remembered today. He heard audiences laugh, gasp, and applaud in theaters from New York to Tokyo, from London to Los Angeles. But there is something people rarely understand about reaching that age. Those are not the moments that wake a man up at 3 in the morning. Those are not the faces he sees when he closes his eyes. When someone reaches 101, fame stops feeling like the point. It probably never was the point, but it can take a very long life to understand that clearly. A person stops counting awards and starts counting people. People have asked Dick Van Dyke for decades which role meant the most to him, which television show changed his life, or which director pushed him the furthest. He often smiles at questions like that. Not because they are bad questions, but because the answers people expect are no longer the answers that matter most. The truth he seems to have arrived at after all those decades is simple. Every great moment in his career became meaningful because somebody was standing beside him when it happened. Somebody believed in him before Hollywood had any reason to. Somebody held the whole thing together when success started pulling everything apart. Somebody sat with him in the quiet afterward and reminded him that even when a chapter ends painfully, another one can still begin. He was far from perfect. That part matters too. He made choices he was not proud of. He caused hurt to people who deserved better from him. And if age teaches anything, it refuses to let a person avoid an honest accounting of his own failures. Love is not about never making mistakes. Every person who has ever loved anyone has made mistakes. What matters is whether a person is willing to carry the weight of those mistakes honestly, and whether he remembers the people who helped shape him into whoever he became. Looking back across such a long stretch of years, Dick Van Dyke's life does not look like one continuous Hollywood story with a clean beginning, middle, and ending. From the inside, it was never that simple. What remains is a gallery of faces. A collection of people who arrived at exactly the right moment, each one carrying something he needed, each one leaving something behind that he still carries. Some of them were famous, most of them were not. Some were written about in newspapers and fan magazines. Others never made a single headline. But each one changed the direction of his life in ways no award, box office number, or television rating ever could. So this story sets aside the movies for a moment. It puts down the credits, the curtain calls, and the retrospectives. Instead, it looks at the people Dick Van Dyke loved most, not because they were famous, not because their names belong in Hollywood history books, but because without them, the man the world came to know would not have existed in the same way. The first person in that story is someone who knew him before any of it began, before the contracts, before the cameras, before the world had any opinion about him at all. Her name was Margie Willett. When they first met, there were no photographers waiting outside, no red carpets ahead of them, and nobody asking for autographs. Dick was simply a young man with ambition and very little else to show for it. Margie did not attach her love to what he might become. She was not waiting to see whether the bet would pay off. She cared about who he was on an ordinary Tuesday, when nothing was happening and nobody was watching. That kind of love is rarer than people realize, and it took him far too long to fully appreciate just how rare it was. They married while he was still chasing a version of success that had not yet arrived. Those early years had no glamour in them. They were two young people trying to stretch a modest income, keep a household running, and build a family on hope and stubbornness. They worried about bills. They worried about the future. They worried the way every young couple worries when they are starting out with more faith than security. But they believed in each other. and they believed that if they stayed committed to getting through it together, they would find a way. Then Hollywood opened its doors. At first, it felt like proof that everything they had endured together had been worth it. Every struggle, every lean year, every moment of doubt seemed to have led directly to that breakthrough. It felt like the story was finally going the way it was supposed to go. But success moves fast, faster than a person is prepared for, no matter how long he has been waiting for it. The schedules stretched, the commitments multiplied, the attention became relentless and constant in ways that are hard to explain to anyone who has not lived through it. Home started to feel less like a place Dick returned to, and more like a place he was always in the process of leaving. Margie carried more than her share through all of it. That is the honest truth. She held things together while he was absent in more ways than just physically. And that became a debt he spent a lifetime reckoning with. She kept the household running while he chased a career that demanded nearly everything from him. The stability she gave him, that quiet and steady foundation, was the reason he could walk onto any set and focus on the work. He did not tell her that enough, not nearly enough. It became one of those truths a person understands too late, when the moment has already passed, and all he can do is carry the gratitude forward. Looking back, Dick came to understand that the strongest people rarely get the recognition they deserve. They are not always standing at podiums or signing autographs. They are the ones picking up the pieces without being asked, holding the structure together so someone else can shine. Margie was that person for him. Life eventually pulled them in different directions. That chapter has been discussed many times, and there is no reason to pretend otherwise. But what often gets lost is everything that came before the ending. The years of genuine hope, the quiet sacrifices, the dreams they built together in rooms nobody was watching before any of the fame began. When Dick Van Dyke thought about love, he did not go straight to how things concluded. He thought about who was sitting beside him at the beginning, helping him become the man he was still trying to be. For him, Margie would always be one of those people. She belongs in the first chapter of his life, and no honest retelling of his story could leave her out. If that first chapter was about building something from the ground up, the next chapter was about something harder. It was about finding hope again after loss, uncertainty, and the quiet fear that happiness might no longer be something he was allowed to reach for. That was where Arlene Silver entered his life. The first thing many people noticed was not her warmth, intelligence, humor, or the way she carried herself in a room. It was the age difference. That became the headline almost every time their names appeared together. Some people laughed openly. Others questioned whether a relationship like theirs could survive a single year, let alone grow into something lasting. Dick understood why people reacted that way. From the outside, it probably did seem unusual. But those people could not see what happened when Arlene and Dick were actually in the same room together. She never looked at him with that mix of nostalgia and pity some people bring to older stars, as if they are staring at a museum piece. She never treated him like a man coasting on old accomplishments, or someone whose best work was safely behind him. She treated him like Dick, just Dick. A person, not a legend, not a headline. That might sound like a small thing, but it was not small at all. When someone has spent decades being recognized everywhere he goes, when his name carries years of expectation and nostalgia, being seen as an ordinary person does not feel ordinary. It feels like relief. It feels like breathing. Arlene gave him that without trying. She brought a kind of peace into his life that he had not realized he was missing. They laughed constantly. They danced together whenever the music called for it. They shared quiet mornings that were never photographed, never written about, and never shaped into someone else's story. Those were the moments he started to treasure most. Not the ones that made the papers, the ones that were just theirs. Getting older teaches things youth cannot. One of those lessons is that happiness does not always announce itself. It does not arrive with a full orchestra or a standing ovation. Sometimes it walks into a life on an ordinary afternoon, It sits down beside someone. It makes him smile at nothing in particular. And suddenly he understands. This is what was missing. That is what Arlene gave him. People often asked whether he lost sleep over what others thought about the relationship. The honest answer was not very much. When a person has lived enough life, he starts to understand that public opinion is a loud noise that rarely contains anything useful. The opinions that matter are the ones exchanged across a dinner table, on a slow walk through the neighborhood, or in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday evening nobody else will ever know about. Arlene reminded him that life does not stop surprising a person just because he has reached a certain age. That matters, because many people quietly accept the idea that after a certain point, the meaningful chapters are finished. They are not. Love does not follow a calendar. It does not check a person's age before deciding whether he is eligible. It certainly does not stop to read the headlines first. Arlene showed him that a heart can still open fully and genuinely, even after someone has already lived what feels like an entire lifetime. That was one of the most important lessons he ever received. There is another part of the story that cannot be left out. His children. When people ask someone who spent decades at the center of Hollywood what he is most proud of, they usually expect an answer about ratings, box office numbers, or a role that changed everything. But the honest answer, the one that keeps a person awake when the house is quiet, has nothing to do with any of that. It has everything to do with family. The older a person gets, the more that truth settles in. Movies wrap. Television shows get canceled or drift into syndication. Awards sit in cabinets and gather dust. But being a father does not have an ending. There is no final season, no closing credits. It continues, and every chapter matters. The harder truth is that Dick was not always the father he wanted to be. The career pulled hard. It pulled constantly. Long hours on set became long weeks away from home, and those weeks stacked up before he fully noticed their weight. Birthdays came and went. School plays, first games, ordinary evenings that would have meant everything to a child who simply wanted his father in the room. He missed more of those moments than he cared to count. And what nobody tells a person is that the moments he misses do not disappear. They stay, not always because the children hold them against him, but because he holds them against himself. He remembers the empty chair. He remembers the phone call made instead of being there. Those memories do not fade with success. If anything, they become sharper. What his children gave him in return was something he did not deserve as easily as they gave it. They gave him grace. Real, quiet, generous grace. They allowed him to keep growing even after they were already grown. They let him become a better father at 60 than he had managed to be at 35. Not every parent gets that second chance, and he never took it lightly. Every conversation with them taught him something. Love is not about doing it right every single time. It is not about perfection or showing up for every milestone on the calendar. It is about honesty when a person falls short. It is about listening without defending himself. It is about saying the things he should have said years earlier and meaning them fully when he finally does. Those words matter more with time, not less. I'm proud of you. I love you. Thank you. Simple sentences, but they can reset a relationship when they are finally spoken sincerely. People spend so much time measuring a career by what it produced, the laughs, the awards, the audiences reached on a Saturday night. Dick was grateful for all of it. But if asked what he was most proud of, the answer would not take long. It would not be a show. It would not be a special. It would not be a film or a role. It would be knowing that the people who call him Dad know exactly how much they have meant to him. Not because he told the world, because he told them. After every set wrapped and every production moved on, they were still there, standing in the ordinary parts of life, the parts no camera ever caught. That is the kind of love that does not need an audience. It simply lasts. Then there was another relationship people misunderstood for years. It had nothing to do with romance. It was not a family bond. It was something harder to explain and in many ways, harder to find. It was trust. That relationship was his friendship with Mary Tyler Moore. When people watched the Dick Van Dyke Show, they saw a married couple on screen, two people sharing a house, raising a child, and navigating the small disasters of everyday life with warmth and comedy. What the audience did not always see was the depth of respect that existed between Dick and Mary before they ever spoke a word in front of a camera together. That respect was not manufactured. That kind of chemistry cannot be faked and then simply switched off when the director calls cut. It came from genuinely recognizing what the other person brought into the room. Mary was brilliant, and even that word does not fully cover it. She had timing most comedic actors spend their whole careers trying to develop. She could walk into a scene they had rehearsed for hours and make it feel as if she had just thought of every single thing in that moment. She made the work look light, even when it was anything but. And she pushed Dick, not by competing, not by trying to outshine anyone, but simply by being that good. A person cannot stand next to someone operating at that level and fail to raise his own. They laughed constantly on that set, real, uncontrollable laughter. The kind that ruins a take before either person says the first line. A look across the room could be enough, a slight shift in expression. Then the whole thing would fall apart in the best possible way. Those were the moments he carried later. Not only because they made television history, though many would argue they did, but because they reminded him what it feels like when two people are completely comfortable with each other. When the work becomes play, and the play becomes something neither person could have created alone. Hollywood is known for creating friendships that are really professional alliances with a warmer surface. They exist inside the context of a project and disappear when that project ends. Dick and Mary's friendship was not built that way. It never needed the show to survive. Over the years, they watched each other change. They celebrated the good seasons and carried each other through harder ones. They showed up when it mattered, even when showing up required effort. And whenever they found themselves in the same room again, whether months or years had passed, it felt immediate. It felt like no time had moved at all. That does not happen often. In Hollywood, it almost never does. When someone finds it, he holds on to it. Real love does not always arrive in the form people expect. It does not follow rules written in magazines or whispered about at dinner parties. It appears in unexpected forms, wearing unexpected faces. Over a life as long as Dick's, one lesson became clear. Love is not one single thing. It is a collection of things, each one shaped differently. Each one carrying its own weight. Sometimes love is loud and world-changing. Sometimes it turns life upside down and leaves someone breathless. But sometimes it is quieter than that. Sometimes it is the steady warmth between two people who choose to show up for each other day after day without fanfare. That was the kind of love Mary gave him. She did not demand attention when she entered a room. She simply made the room better by being in it. In an industry built on noise and spectacle, Mary had stillness, and that stillness was powerful. She was the kind of friend who cheered for someone without an agenda. She celebrated wins without keeping score. In a lifetime filled with people, Dick understood that the ones who love without keeping score are the ones worth treasuring. Mary was that for him. His career would have looked different without her in his corner. His days would have carried a little less light. And he remained grateful, more than he could properly express, that their paths crossed when they did. By this point in the story, it may seem obvious where everything leads. The person Dick loved most later in life was not someone who simply changed the direction of his career or handed him a better opportunity. She changed the shape of his life. Her name was Arlene Silver. People spent years talking about the age difference between them. Dick understood that. He was not naive about it. It made for an easy headline, and the press has always loved an easy headline. But a headline has never sat beside someone at the end of a hard day and said nothing, because nothing was exactly what he needed. A headline has never laughed with someone until both people ache. A headline has never reached for a hand in a quiet room and reminded him, without a single word, that being together is enough. Arlene did all of those things. She did them without being asked, and she did them without expecting anything in return. When she came into his life, Dick was not looking for anything. He had already lived through so many chapters, so many loves, losses, and ordinary days, that he thought he understood happiness. He thought he had seen most of what life had to offer a man like him. He was wrong. Arlene walked in and showed him gently, without a lecture, that there was still more to discover, that he still had more to feel. She brought back something he had not realized he was missing: lightness. A reason to feel the morning ahead was worth getting up for. She reminded him that getting older does not mean a person stops reaching for things. It does not mean he stops finding reasons to laugh, stay curious, or be surprised by the world. It certainly does not mean the heart stops making room. That may have been the most important thing she taught him. The heart does not run out of room. It keeps expanding if a person lets it. They shared countless moments most people would call ordinary. Morning coffee before the rest of the world woke up. Long conversations that began nowhere and ended somewhere neither of them expected. Walks with no destination, just movement, fresh air, and the simple pleasure of being beside someone trustworthy. To a stranger, those moments might have looked like nothing much. To Dick, they became the moments he held closest. They became the ones he replayed when he needed to remember what actually mattered. After more than 100 years on Earth, he seemed to reach one conclusion completely. Love is not about finding someone who removes all difficulty from life. It is not about finding someone who makes every day perfect. It is about finding someone who makes even the plainest, most unremarkable day feel worth remembering. That is what Arlene was for him. Not a headline, not a story for other people to debate. A gift. A daily, quiet, irreplaceable gift. People sometimes ask whether he would go back and change things if he could. Of course he would. He made mistakes that stayed with him. He caused pain he never intended to cause. He carried regrets that did not fully disappear, no matter how much time passed. But something else was true too. He was lucky enough to love and be loved more than once. Each chapter taught him something he could not have learned any other way. Margie taught him what loyalty looks like when it is real. She believed in him before the world had any particular reason to. His children taught him that family is the most serious responsibility a person can ever take on, more serious than any role he ever played. Mary showed him that friendship, when it runs deep enough, becomes its own kind of love, distinct from all the others, and no less precious. And Arlene gave him something he did not know he still needed. She reminded him that it is never too late. Not at 80, not at 90, not even at 101. It is never too late for the heart to find its way to something new. Dick Van Dyke never counted his films first. He never tallied up the awards sitting on some shelf. When he looked back at his life, the thing that mattered most was not the number of hits, contracts, ratings, or credits. It was the people, the ones who stayed, the ones who showed up, the ones who loved him, not as a television legend, not as a Hollywood name, but as a man. That is a reckoning many people do not reach until very late. But when it arrives, it hits hard. There is something humbling about hearing a man who had almost everything Hollywood could offer say that none of it was really the point. Dick Van Dyke had the big roles, the fan mail, the applause, the enduring recognition, and the kind of career most performers could only dream of. And his conclusion, after all of it, was simple. The people were everything, not the applause, not the recognition, the people. Every rushed phone call put off for later, every dinner that was meant to be scheduled but never was, every moment where someone assumed the people they loved already knew how much they meant. Dick understood, with the clarity that only comes from a very long life, that the small, ordinary moments are the ones that end up defining everything. Not the opening nights, not the reviews, the front door, the familiar voice, the hand that reaches for yours when things get hard. Those are the things that stay. Hollywood gave Dick more than he ever reasonably expected. Unforgettable roles, friendships that lasted decades, memories layered so deep they never truly faded. He came up in an industry that could manufacture stars and discard them just as quickly. He survived that. He reinvented himself. He kept going. But even with all of that, the thing he kept returning to was not fame. It was the people he got to come home to. There is a lesson buried in that, and it is not complicated. Do not wait. Do not wait until life is almost over to tell people what they mean. Do not assume they already know. Do not assume there will be time later. Say it now. Make the phone call that keeps getting postponed. Take the walk. Sit down for the meal. Show up in the small ways, because the small ways are the ones that build into something lasting. Dick Van Dyke had laughter. He had heartbreak. He had second chances he probably did not expect. And through all of it, through the career reinventions, the personal losses, and the long arc of a life lived both publicly and privately, he felt loved. That, more than any award or legacy ranking, was what he carried with him. He did not feel grateful simply because he became famous. Fame was the backdrop. Love was the story. That is the fitting note to end on for a man whose career crossed generations, formats, stages, screens, comedy, music, dancing, and television history. Dick Van Dyke was not just a classic Hollywood figure. He was someone who kept building, kept caring, kept learning, and kept showing up for the people around him. And when he finally looked back at the whole thing, he felt lucky. Not because of what he achieved, because of who had been standing next to him while he achieved it. That is the legacy. Not only the filmography, not only the credits, not only the decades of entertainment, the people who filled his life with something real. If this story hit you differently than expected, drop a comment below and let us know what surprised you most about Dick Van Dyke's journey. There is so much more from this era worth uncovering, and more stories like this one are coming soon. Subscribe so you do not miss them, and we will see you in the next one.